Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SOA Webcast, Strategies for Success, on the recently announced ASA curriculum changes, new micro-credentials, and affiliate membership program. My name is Amy Schutzenhofer, and I lead the SOA's efforts in reaching and engaging our employer community, so please think of me as a key SOA resource. As you know, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available after the event on our website. If you'd like to ask a question of the presenters, you can do that at any time by clicking on Ask a Question in the bottom frame of the Zoom window. Our presenters will speak on these topics for about 30 minutes, and then we will move to your questions for the balance of the webcast. Your presenters today are Amanda Hugg, SOA board member, and Stuart Klugman, SOA Senior Staff Fellow in Education. We thank you both for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thanks so much for joining. As Amy said, I'm Amanda Hugg. I'm on the board of directors for the SOA. I also work as a director at Willis Towers Watson, and very excited to be here with you and talk about some of the changes that are coming from the SOA that I think are going to position us as an even stronger organization into the future. But before we jump into those changes, we wanted to talk a little bit about the why. So every couple of years, the SOA board sits down and re-envisions our strategy for, call it, the next 3 to 5 years. And a couple of years ago, when this started, we said, you know what, let's do a deeper dive analysis of the external environment to understand what's happening around us as actuaries, what's happening in the insurance profession, what's happening globally, so that we can position ourselves into the future to stay relevant for many, many years and decades to come. And so as part of that project, we engaged McKinsey and worked with them on this, what we call diagnosis. And we learned a number of things, some of which probably aren't surprising to you, but I wanted to touch on them briefly because I think this informs the why behind what you're going to hear about, that Stuart and I are going to talk about some of the changes that are coming. And so the first two go together. So we see the rise of data science and the advance of artificial intelligence. And data science, no surprise to anyone on the call, obviously, has really emerged as a discipline that's distinct from actuarial science. And it's really coming into our workplace as a key function in the insurance industry. And why this matters for us and why it matters especially for you all is that data science is a profession that's competing for the top candidates that we would have expected to join the actuarial profession. And so we have to distinguish ourselves as offering something different and something, frankly, better that data science doesn't necessarily offer. I recently presented to a group of 200 or so actuarial students in different organizations as part of an actuarial conference. And in the networking hour, I had some of the students tell me, every single person in our university double majors in actuarial science and data science. And I thought, wow, like I knew some were doing that, but to hear that they were all doing that to kind of position themselves, it's a smart thing to do, position themselves with different options. But why is actuarial science not compelling enough in of itself? So that's one of the things kind of that we're up against. And with that, data scientists are disrupting insurance, and we have to figure out how do we use the tools that we have without necessarily becoming data scientists, but being able to leverage the good technology that's out there. Same thing with artificial intelligence. You're seeing automation, you're seeing machine learning, and this really changes how we work. If you think about it, there is going to be, frankly, less of that kind of technical data crunching work that often happens at the entry level with your actuarial students or your actuarial interns because of this automation. And so, but we have to think of this not necessarily as a bad thing. It just means that the skill sets that employers are going to emphasize are changing. And so instead of all of just that technical, number crunching, there's going to be more emphasis on EQ and AQ, that, adaptability quotient, that emotional quotient, as well as skills like judgment, creativity, problem solving. When you're working with such sophisticated technology, you need people there to make judgment calls about how to use the models or which models to use or what the input should be, just like we've always been doing for many years. And so that's an opportunity for us to think about how do we evolve our skills that we're preparing students with. We're also seeing the changing nature of credentialing and skill development. And this is really the one that we're going to hear a lot about today. So we're seeing a lot of interest in more customized and stackable credentials, as well as what I'll call just-in-time education. So instead of doing maybe a big bang certificate or even a big bang degree, you have a project next week that you need skills on. So you spend 2 hours in an e-learning course, right? That's the reality. That's how I work. And we're hearing a lot of people work today. And so in addition, we're seeing to some extent, less employer support for these big bang credentials, or even like our major meetings that the SOA might hold. And we have these competitors in online courses. Think about Coursera, Khan Academy, LinkedIn Learning, right? They're all out there. Sometimes all you need is a YouTube video. And so how does the SOA evolve our education and our professional development to work in that new landscape? We also are going to need to strengthen our member and candidate engagement. The SOA is going to be increasingly diverse by 2027 because of so many new international members. Our candidate base will no longer be majority non-Hispanic white, and millennial and Gen Z members, right, are coming into the fold. And so they have a different relationship and a way of interacting, of course, with their employers, but also with the SOA. And then finally, we're going to see less employer support in the future, which means we need to have a stronger emotional connection to our members. And then similar to that, we're going to see more growth coming out of our North American geography. And so the insurance industry here is, largely, I would say, saturated and mature, but we're seeing it grow in Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America. And finally, diversity, inclusion, equity are core to our strategy. And so that's kind of where we are, what we've learned, and really now we're pivoting to the action. This is where we are, what we're up against, what we're facing, how things are changing, and now we're going to take steps to make sure that we continue our relevance and our excellence. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Stuart to talk about some of those changes.
Thank you, Amanda, and welcome everyone. Glad you're with us today. I'm hoping you've all actually had a chance to look through the announcements we've made, maybe even attended earlier webinars, and visited the website where we have this information posted. So my plan is to go through this fairly quickly and therefore give you more time to ask questions, to fill in any gaps regarding pieces of information we have yet to communicate, to which you'd like to have the answers. So here's our graphic of what's old and what's new. The graphic's designed to convey a few different things. One is, if you actually took a ruler to the right-hand side, you'd find that it's slightly smaller. There may be more boxes, but we've sized them to be proportional to what we think the candidate effort is to complete each of them. And again, it's slightly smaller. One of our goals in this redesign was to be slightly smaller, but we also knew, as Amanda pointed out, there were several things we had to accomplish. I'm going to point out a few key things that are different on the right than on the left. They'll also be summarized on the next page as well, but it might be easier to see them on this chart. On the left, you'll find the investment and financial markets exam. That exam does not appear on the right. Our research has indicated this is not unimportant for actuaries, but less important for all actuaries to know at this stage. And I'll talk a little more about what's become of those topics a bit later. We've taken the long-term and short-term actuarial mathematics exam and replaced them with two other exams, one called Fundamentals of Actuarial Mathematics, with an introduction to both long and short term, and then candidates will have a choice of taking an advanced exam in one area or the other. The next major change is directly in response to that data science issue we've heard so much about, and that's the new Advanced Topics in Predictive Analytics exam that you'll see at the top. Another change on here is in response to something else Amanda mentioned, and that is the introduction of the AQ and EQ elements. The current Fundamentals of Actuarial Practice course has 8 modules featuring 7 end-of-module assessments and 1 final assessment. On the right-hand side, there is still Fundamentals of Actuarial Practice, but it will contain 5 modules with end of module exercises on 4 of them and a final assessment. There will be 2 new modules carved essentially out of 3 of the old FAP modules called Pre-Actuarial Foundations and Actuarial Science Foundations. We've separated them out because we want to encourage candidates to take those modules earlier in their pathway to help them realize both what actuaries do and the other skills that are important besides solving math problems that are necessary to be good at actuarial work. And so bringing those AQ, EQ skills in earlier will both help their education, but we also hope just sends a signal to our candidates that these are important skills and just as important as getting the right number on a multiple choice question. They also facilitate the micro-credentials that I'll be talking about a bit later. So those are the big changes. Let's go to the next slide. So this sort of another side-by-side comparison. Again, the split of LTAM, STAM, the introduction of the ATPA exam, and the removal of IFM, facilitating micro-credentials. And no, we don't think any additional travel time and maybe slightly less. I do want to take this moment to talk a little bit about what we're doing with IFM. In researching it, we've learned a few things. Some of the topics are actually covered elsewhere. There's a lot of overlap on the corporate finance part with the corporate finance VEE, and there is corporate finance material in the FAP course as well. And we'll make sure all that is maintained and continued. The other part of IFM is the material on derivatives. And we're moving some of that. We've not yet published the ALTAM syllabus, the Advanced Long-Term Topics syllabus yet, but the draft version has an introduction to the Black-Scholes formula, to options, and in particular, how you can use options to price some basic products that are included in the life contingencies exam. So how to use them to incorporate them into pricing secondary guarantees on life insurances and annuities. So we'll introduce candidates to that topic there. But what we've also done is made sure that the fellowship track committees are all on board with ensuring that as their candidates get to them, that they will provide the necessary education on these topics to do what they need to do to do proper actuarial work in their area. So that's particularly the ILA track and the QFI tracks, where those topics are used heavily. They're on board with it. For the most part, they have to reintroduce that material anyway, just because of the gap between when candidates take the IFM exam and when they see it again on their fellowship pathway. In addition, the IFM exam, to some degree, I would say, gets you to know enough to be dangerous, but not to know enough to do a really good job of using those techniques. And by bringing it all together in the fellowship track, we think that'll produce actuaries who are well positioned to properly use those techniques. So let's go on to the next slide. The other big split is in the short and long-term exams, basic topics, even split. The FAM exam will be a multiple choice exam. If you have looked at the recent MLC and current LTAM exams, this will be not unlike the multiple choice basic questions that are on the current LTAM exam, and will create the same kind of questions for the short-term material as well. So this is to ensure that all of our candidates have a grounding in these two subjects. But then we will ask them to do an advanced exam in their choice of long or short term. One of the things that's motivated this part is a call from actuaries who have specialized and continually ask us, why did we have to learn that other stuff? And we think they should learn some other stuff because all actuaries indeed should know something about everything. The question has always been where to draw that line. And we think FAM is proper place for that line. Now, one of the questions we often get here is, what if I take the long-term exam, but then ultimately go down a fellowship track that's short-term, such as the group and health track? You will not have to retake the short-term exam. However, the creators of the syllabus and exams for the group and health track may indicate that in attempting them, they're going to assume certain topics from the short-term syllabus, and candidates should review those prior to entering the track, but they don't have to go back and demonstrate mastery of it through passing the ASTAM exam. The next slides are about transition rules. We don't have a couple things on here that should have been. The VEE is also remains, so VEEs get credit for VEE. And the other exams that aren't changing at all, except for maybe some syllabus tweaks along the way, will still be in the system, and credit for old is credit for new. It gets tricky when we go to the next one. We get a lot of questions from candidates in particular who want to know exactly where they'll stand when they go through this. This chart, we hope, makes it clear. If you have neither the current exams, you have to do the new system, FAM or your choice. If you have only LTAM, you get credit for the new LTAM plus the FAM L half. So the half of that multiple choice exam that's on long term, and you still must take and pass the short-term version, or the other half. And we plan to offer the other in halves for 2 years. So through June, 6 administrations through June 2024. And it's also important to note that if you're in that top category, you must take the whole exam and pass the whole exam. The only people who can take the half exam are those who have credit for the other half. And if you have them both, you're good. You're a little bit overeducated, but there's nothing more to do. The next slide talks about the IFM. It should be very clear that there's no actual correspondence between these two exams, but we wanted to make sure that candidates who had gone to the trouble to study and pass IFM did not have an extra component to their pathway with the introduction of ATPA. So the associateship requirements will read passing either IFM or ATPA, your choice as a candidate. The IFM will continue to be available through the end of 2022. So candidates who've been preparing for it or just prefer that exam will have multiple opportunities to pass it. And conversely, ATPA will open for registration next year. And so candidates who would prefer that route can sign up for ATPA beginning next year. Okay, let's continue to move along. I've already actually talked about this slide. These are our new e-learning modules that are attached to the early part of the pathway. So having already covered that, let's go ahead to the next slide. Again, timing, we do not have dates for the revised PNFM, which are having a bit of subject matter trimmed from them that we've deemed, I'll say, no longer necessary for candidates to succeed on later exams. But because we want to maintain the ability to give instant results for these exams, we have to coordinate with Prometric and adjust the item bank to make sure all those questions that are in it remain suitable for the new syllabus. So all we're guaranteeing at this point is there'll be at least 6 months notice before we shift versions. It'll probably be more, but it'll be at least 6 months. So my best guess is sometime in the third quarter next year might be when the new exam is likely to be given. So again, we want to make sure all the technical details behind the computer administration and instant results will be in order with no glitches when we make the conversion. I've mentioned the last IFM, the last LTAM, spring 2022, last STAM, June of 2022. In order to give the committees an opportunity to convert to the new system, you'll note that in the fall of 2022, there is FAM, but no LTAM or STAM. And I've mentioned the ATPA modules will open on January of 2022 with the first assessment in June. And those new early modules also available in January of 2022. I'll mention a couple more things that I haven't said yet. The new advanced LTAM and STAM will be written answer twice per year and have the flavor of the written answer component of the current LTAM exam. All exams administered at Prometric centers, as we've made a commitment that that's going to be our mode of delivery for the foreseeable future. ATPA will be modules, so we'll provide the education as we do for the PA exam. The difference for the advanced topics is it will be a take-home exam akin to the FAP final assessment. So there'll be submission windows. At the end of the window, they'll all get graded. If we match FAP, candidates would have 96 hours to work on that exam before submitting it. The committee will make that determination after the syllabus is finalized, so we can make sure that there'll be enough time for candidates to do a good job on preparing the ATPA report. So with that, I'm going to go to my next part of the presentation on micro-credentials. So recognizing accomplishments for candidates who have done part of the work towards their associateship. So if you go to the next slide, the board has approved 3 micro-credentials. There could be more in the future, but there's 3 that have been approved, and we will start offering as soon as the components are available for candidates. So the idea about these micro-credentials is they represent distinct knowledge and skills. So a person who has the combination represented by each of them has accomplished something specific that they can show to a prospective employer, put on their resume, and again, a quick demonstration of a certain subset of knowledge. So the pre-actuarial foundations covers enabling skills, excuse me, the things you need to know to learn how to be an actuary. But other than the introduction to what actuaries do in the module, none of the exam or VEE content has any actuarial component. It doesn't help you understand what an actuarial problem is or how actuaries go about solving them, but they do represent a person who has this micro-credential is clearly demonstrated that they have the ability to learn what actuaries do in the remaining part of the pathway. If you add actuarial science foundations on top of it, you've added an introduction to actuarial work. So particularly through the SRM and FAM courses, you'd here be something that at times had been called a para-actuary, an actuarial technician. It's not unlike the credential we were giving with the CAA, the Certified Actuary Analyst. So these are people who would be qualified to work alongside actuaries in technical roles. If they wanted to stop here and take that credential with them, they would not, as we'll note on the next slide, they will not be qualified to actuary. They will not meet the US qualification standards. And we want to understand that they aren't actuaries, but they can support actuarial work. Then we'll note we have 3 exams that are all about data science or predictive analytics. And so just to recognize an actuary who's gone through those 3 exams, the micro-credential would be available for them. The next slide, a few more details. So you would get a digital badge. We're still working on exactly how that will work. I think the latest is that once a candidate has completed the requirements to earn this, they'll get an email that say, hey, you've got it. Do you want to claim it? And all they have to do is say yes, and then it will appear on their SOA transcript, and they'll have official recognition that they've acquired it. These are more like a college degree. There's no expiration, no continuing ed requirement, no renewal required. It's kind of one and done. At that point in time, you've accomplished that particular set of objectives. I don't know if I mentioned, there's also no fee associated with this. The next thing you can do if you've completed the second or third micro-credentials that were on the chart previously, so actuarial science foundations or data science, that gives you a candidate an option to join our new professional affiliate membership program. But to tell you about that, I'm turning the stage back to Amanda.
Thanks, Stuart. So as you know, we have historically only offered membership to our ASA and FSA members. And what we've really come to realize is that there is a reason and a benefit to extend membership more broadly. As there are a lot of other people associated with the SOA, including candidates on the ASA and FSA pathway, probably most interesting to the group on this call, as well as people who support actuaries in different capacities. So with that, we're launching our affiliate memberships. And we're hoping that this membership category is going to do a couple things. So first of all, we really want to strengthen our connection with candidates and each other. So we want to build a stronger community among those pursuing or in the actuarial profession. And we want to build this connection earlier. So what we've heard from a number of candidates is that while they're taking their exams, they really view the relationship with the SOA to be transactional. It's just about, passing exams. And as you can imagine, probably adversarial at points when the pathway becomes difficult. And so we wanted to say there's so much more to the SOA than just exams. And we don't want people to have to wait until their fellowship to figure that out or to be a part of all the amazing benefits that the SOA can offer. And so another reason, we want to build these relationships earlier on is, to be honest, not everyone gets to ASA or FSA, and that doesn't mean that they don't have value in the actuarial profession. I think about all the people I work with that, maybe took an exam or two, but didn't go the full way, but they're contributing valuable efforts to the actuarial work at our company. And I'm sure you all can think of people like that as well. And so our hope is that those people don't become disconnected from the SOA, but are still part of the actuarial family and can have a relationship and community with other actuaries or other people who have sat for some exams. And so we are planning on having an advisory committee that will help guide future programming and benefits. And we have kind of two windows here. So the first window is October 21st, and this is the first affiliate membership. And this is intended for students and people who support them. So that would be teachers, professors, career counselors, or just other non-actuaries who work with students and candidates. And then the second door, so to speak, opens in January 2022. So a couple months after. That feels really far away when I say it out loud, but I realize it's not all that far. So that's a second affiliate membership program. And this is what we're calling professional tier. So this is designed for and offered to candidates on their pathway to ASA, probably the folks in your actuarial student programs that you work with. And as a professional affiliate member, candidates are going to be able to join most volunteer committees. They'll have access to peer-based community building that we're trying to strengthen at the SOA. And you can think about this for people who will have the actuarial science foundations and or data science for actuaries micro-credentials that we're launching. And the affiliate membership is not going to make candidates qualified. It's not going to make them signing actuaries. The ASA and FSA are still reserved for that. But we're really excited about this because we think this is going to expand the umbrella of people who are part of the Society of Actuaries family. And I think in the end, that's going to benefit all of us. So more details to come on these two programs, but we're really excited about it.
Thank you very much, both Stuart and Amanda, for going over all of those details. Now we will open it up to questions. You will see some resources on your screen. We also will put those links in the chat for you, and know that we're going to continue to provide updates on these curriculum changes as they become available. Amanda, what is the expected cost of the newly created affiliate memberships?
Sure. So the first program, the one launching in October for students and people who support them, is free, which we're excited about. We felt like students should have a low barrier to entry to just participate and get excited about what the SOA is doing. The professional tier will have a small cost. We are still talking internally about what that will be, but that will be communicated in advance of launch. Great.
Stuart, we have a few questions for you. The first one is the comment about those who didn't take ASTAM needing to review the material prior to the track that's going to become available for those who didn't take LTAM but are going to take the life and annuity track?
Yes, it'd be symmetric. So I was just using that as an example, but the same would apply. That if I'll say a candidate picks the wrong exam, and there's no such thing really as a wrong exam here, but if they do head in another direction, there would be some knowledge to pick up. So this would not be unlike when we introduced the PA exam. We set the SRM exam. Knowledge is a prerequisite, but candidates who got transition credit for SRM didn't have to go back and take the exam, but if they didn't review that material, it could cause them some challenges on the PA exam.
Okay, thank you. Also, someone had a question. Is there a time period LTAM, ASTAM needs to be passed upon passing FAM?
So the short answer is no. And that's a tradition we've had with all of our exams. I can remember many years ago, we talked about having expiration dates on exam credits. It's like some universities, if your credits are like 10 years old, they'll erase them from your record. But we've never implemented that sort of thing. So the only way that there could be an effect, of course, is if we go through another transition of some sort that affects the candidate progress through the pathway, but otherwise no time period.
Okay, thank you. Is there new material that needs to be learned if someone moves from LTAM to FAML or STAM to FAMS?
So the draft syllabus that we have right now would say no. So I'm interpreting the question as follows. If you say studied for LTAM, but didn't pass it, and you now have to take FAML as a result, would you have to learn anything new? And the answer, I think, would be a strong no. It's the basic material that's already on the syllabus. As I mentioned, the advanced exams may add a topic or two that aren't on the current LTAM or STAM. I'd already mentioned the use of derivatives for annuity or life insurance pricing would be a new topic for ALTAM. So there could be a little bit new there, but a candidate who studied for the old one, LTAM or STAM, would be prepared for the FAM half that's now covered.
Okay, great. Thank you. We do have a question related to discussing the forthcoming FSA exam pathway changes. Can you mention maybe a timing or next steps on that?
I'm not really sure what that means exactly in that. So maybe the asker could be a little bit more specific.
Okay, we'll see if we can get some more details on that. We'll switch over to Amanda if that's okay. Is the free affiliate membership meant for those who support actuaries but haven't taken exams, or only a few? Or is this mostly just for those who support actuarial students?
I will say both. It's sort of come one, come all. So it's designed and open for people that are starting on the exam pathway. Think about exam P and FM and those people that are supporting those students, but all are invited to join. So if there's someone who is later in their career, took a couple exams and kind of stopped there, they're welcome to join the program as well. And we hope that they do.
Terrific, thank you. Regarding the micro-credentials, are those received along the path to ASA or FSA, or do those micro-credentials include additional or new exams, learnings needed outside of the ASA pathway?
I can take that one. So these were specifically designed to be contained in the pathway. Now, that doesn't mean we may introduce some in the future that are outside or partly outside, but for now, all three of those require no new exams. Now, I do want to make a couple of small comments about that. For example, the first two micro-credentials require those new modules. Now, if you're on FAP right now, I didn't talk about that in transition, but a candidate who's on FAP, excuse me, and finishes the current FAP can get their ASA. but they would not receive the micro-credentials because they must take those associated new modules to actually get the micro-credential. We didn't want them to be awarded without those AQ, EQ emphasized skills as part of it. So just getting an ASA in the next short while would not necessarily get you the micro-credentials if you've already sort of gone past those topics. Similarly, the data science micro-credential requires the new ATPA exam, which candidates don't have to take to get their ASA. So if they actually wanted that micro-credential, they'd still have to take the ATPA exam. And again, just to be clear, passing IFM does not give you ATPA credit, so could not be used for that micro-credential. But IFM does give you the credit you need to get your ASA and to move on.
Okay, thank you. We have another question here for Stuart. If someone takes the wrong exam and needs to gain that knowledge prior to taking FSA exams, will there be guidance or a syllabus from the SOA to cover that material?
Yes, that would be track specific. So each track would have to look back and say what from that material do we need? Because it wouldn't necessarily be all of it. So each track would need to isolate what they viewed as important.
Okay, great. Back to our FSA exam pathway changes. This person had heard that there may be changes specifically for the group health track. That may not be the case, but if so, what does the timing look like? Or if there are no changes forthcoming, that would be fine also.
Okay, so yeah, there are the sort of next phase of all of this work is to take a look at the FSA pathway. That's in early stages. So there are committees looking at possible changes. The target date for the first look at that would not be until a spring board meeting in 2022. So we're kind of targeting recommendations for March of 2022. But it's a look-see. One of the things we did is conduct last year a job analysis that informed the ASA changes, where the question was asked, what do all actuaries need to know? We've also done a job analysis asking what do actuaries in this practice area need to know. So the committees have that at their disposal. We also want to continue the notion of explore the notion of do we want to have micro-credentials or new certificates at the fellowship level? So there's a lot being considered, but there's nothing on the table yet. We've asked the relevant committees to take a look in light of what we've learned the last few years and see what might be done.
And I'll jump in too and add to that, Stuart. So I think, from a board perspective, just talking to you all who are very involved in actuarial student programs, I guess I would just say changes are probably always coming, right? You probably took your exams, they came in the past, they're coming in the future. And I think that's a positive, right? A lot of times, of course, when you're in it, it's painful when changes do come. But the reason we're trying to change and adapt is to be more flexible and be more nimble and put things on the syllabus that are more directly relevant. So like for me, I'm really excited about the advanced topics and predictive analytics exam, because that's what we've been hearing students say, I need more of these skills. That ties directly back to, the acceleration of data science and artificial intelligence. And I think kudos to the SOA for how fast they got that information out there. And so I think it's a good thing, as we're shifting and adapting our syllabi, hopefully it means that your students are better prepared to do their actuarial work.
While we have you, Amanda, a question for you. Is there a fee for the professional affiliate membership?
Yeah, so there will be a fee. We haven't determined what yet, but we do think that there is a value out there. And so part of it is, just making people recognize that it's an honor to be part of the SOA. And so there will be a small fee because there's a lot that comes along with it.
Thank you. Stuart, another question on FAP. For students working on the current FAP modules, will they get partial credit for the new FAP?
So the way it's going to work is if you're on the current FAP, you just proceed through, and it will continue to be available for 3 more years, so through 2024. So those candidates would probably be best served just to finish up, get their ASA, and move on. They do not get credit for those new modules, nor do they have to take those new modules. So the only candidate, which I suspect there won't be very many if they're this close to ASA, but if they did want to go back and claim one of those first 2 micro-credentials, those candidates would have to take and complete the new modules. However, the reverse will be beneficial to those who have yet to start their modules. Those who take either of the first 2 modules that we're introducing for the micro-credentials, they will get credit. And I believe my memory is correct, for the first module gives you credit for 2 FAP modules in the current system, and the other one gives you credit for a 3rd module. So if you do the 2 new modules and then want to start FAP, you would only have to do the remaining 5 modules for which you don't have credit. So it's a one-way conversion, but mostly because we don't want to be awarding those micro-credentials to those who haven't taken the new version of the modules. But for ASA purposes, either set of early modules will be fine.
Okay, we will be following up with some materials to this presentation, so thank you for that question as well. Thank you both, Amanda and Stuart, for your leadership and expertise today, and a special thank you to all of our student professional coordinators and leaders who attended today and submitted questions. This concludes the webcast. If you have any additional questions or comments, you can send them to the SOA at membercoms@soa.org, or feel free to email me, aschutzenhofer@soa.org, or reply to the invitation you received to this webcast. For a recording of the webcast, detailed program descriptions, and FAQs, please visit soa.org. Thanks again for joining us, and enjoy your day.